That's I never get tired of the hook of that song. That's Matt Maher, I think, and the song "Lord, I Need You." It's kind of an interesting tune if you're not a God person scanning the radio dial today and you hear that. But I don't care. I love that song. So you can just figure out what it's about as you keep listening to this radio station. Kevin McCullough, glad to be with you. Tonight on the Kevin McCullough Show, we're going to have even more of the situation that is going on. We just got a headline crossing the wires, $400 billion on Thursday, yesterday. $400 billion is how much our national debt jumped in a 24-hour period. Can't figure that part out. 17.075 trillion now is where it stands. So it's a good thing we got that debt ceiling up so we can just keep packing on the pork in that credit card. Anyway, Kevin McCullough, also my column will be out this weekend. I hope you'll look for that at townhall.com. We've got Dr. Gina Loudon in studio with us, and she has graciously made time to be with us. And Dr. Gina, I told you, different kind of interview than you've ever had before, okay?
Yeah, absolutely, and lots of fun, so I appreciate that.
Good. Was reading your bio. Playboy.
Playboy has actually cited my
all I
work.
did was just say the word because it says has appeared in or been cited by, and I'm assuming it was the cited by part.
It was the cited by
please,
part.
for people that are interested, because you're a homeschooling mom, you're a woman of faith, you obviously love the Lord. I just don't want people to misunderstand. Please explain what that is.
Listen, I'll take my message to anyone that will listen. And
Good for
I
you.
have a feeling that there are a lot of people that probably read Playboy on a regular basis that just might not listen to your show or mine, and they probably will never buy either of our books either. So I'm thinking that we have to take our message to them. So I'm happy, and I will always grant interviews. I did the show ABC's Wife Swap, as you may or may not know. I do the Jon Stewart show. I try to figure out ways to penetrate, knowing all the while that I might take that big risk of being laughed at or being ridiculed. You know what? Listen, I look back at the life of Christ, and I think my lot is very simple comparatively. And we are supposed to count it pure joy whenever we are persecuted. And so I try to really do that. And I think some of that scriptural bearing, and certainly the work that you do and the work that AFR does, really bolsters me in my courage to kind of keep plowing forward in this cultural war. It's not really a war if we're only in our echo chambers, as you know.
Hey, okay, now we're having church up in here, because that's what it's all about. Dr. Gina Loudon is her name. Kevin McCullough is mine. And we could talk off air for hours, Gina. My business partner, Stephen Baldwin, and a bunch of what you just said runs so deep into the core of what my company is and what we do in terms of what we're producing. We've got to connect on another level at some time. But thanks for making time today. Another interesting, odd question. You go to your homepage at your website, you're doing a radio show in front of a beach.
Mm-hmm. It's rough.
How'd that happen?
Don't hate.
And can I have that imported to my backdrop? Because I'm looking out over Central Park back there.
People will sometimes say, "Is that a green screen?" I'm like, no, it's all the, and as much fun as it sounds, I'll give you just a little glimpse inside. As you know, our lives aren't quite as glamorous as some people probably think they are.
No, they're not at all.
You do radio on the beach. There are a lot of wires and there are a lot of controls. And if there's one thing you know about sea air, it is that it rusts. And I had no idea the degree to which things rust until, of course, I was trying to do a radio show from the beach. So we are almost every day waking up to find that this wire has rusted, or this button is no longer turning, or just mysterious random things happen. But I'll tell you what, it is beautiful to sit there in that backdrop of what my pastor, Jim Garlow at Skyline Church in San Diego, says he believes was the original Garden of Eden. And that is San Diego. Well. It's stunning. And I am continually in wonder that people can live there and not believe in God. I don't know how you can look at that majesty between the oceans and the mountains and the wildlife and just the unbelievable display of God's majesty and doubt him for a moment. I really don't understand that.
Pastor Jim's an amazing guy. Tell him hi for me when you see him next. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that you could get an argument. My lovely bride is from Southern California and spent a lot of her time in Santa Barbara.
Oh, I love
And
Santa
so
Barbara.
I think you could. I don't know. Santa
I went to
Barbara,
grad
San
school
Diego.
there.
Which
I know,
one
I
was
love
Garden
Santa
of
Barbara.
Eden? I don't know, but it's pretty close. Pretty close draw in my book.
I agree with you. You know, Santa Barbara's great. I spent a lot of time there as well.
It's a beautiful stuff. Okay, Dr. Gina Loudon is with us. Back to our discussion. Honor. How do you begin to institute honor in the Loudon kids? Because the next generation, look, your time, I hate to tell you this, my time, your time, it's done.
It's done.
Our most influential part of our life is over. Those little munchkins in my house, the ankle biters, 3 and 1, they're already stepping onto the stage. Your kids are a little bit older. But what have you done to instill this idea that they can never get away from the virtue? There's a word you don't hear anymore either.
Right.
But the virtue of honor specifically. What have you done to reinforce that so that that is a key component of everything that they are?
You know, I just tend to go back to really fundamental things that I've learned in the Bible. I was raised by a really super liberal father who to this day remains super liberal, and my mother who is a conservative and is a Christian, and they were divorced when I was very young. So parenting for me was a completely pioneering experience. And as you know, there is no manual for parenting. I do have my
They don't tell you that, by the way, ahead of time.
They don't.
There's no book on this.
No. And as an only child of 2 only children, I didn't even have a lot of places to look for examples in my own life. So I just tend to resort at those moments where I don't have a lot to look to the Bible. And, you know, when God talks about what the most important commandments are, the second commandment that he mentions is the most important is to love one another. And that sounds so trite in some ways, but it is often a lot harder to apply those things that sound simple than the things that sound complicated. And so just to really first resort to love and to give my children permission to love people that are different than us, people that don't believe the same things we believe, people that don't have the same morals that we have, people who don't have the same religion that we have. Just trying to really give my children that permission so that their horizons are their own, as God would call them ultimately. So I really, you know, we have a few little fun things in our house that we do. And one of those is we really aren't into television. Now that doesn't sound very fun, but we really aren't into television. We really don't allow our children to watch television. There's one television that actually wife swap put in my living room and I promptly removed and put in my bedroom. So my children only have access to it through that. It's not that we live in a cocoon, even though we do homeschool and we do get out once in a while. But it is that relationship, just like the relationship with God is so important. It's really more about that than the brand of your faith. That relationship with our children is so important to us that we want to hold that sacred over everything else. So we try not to allow the media to take a priority in our children's lives. Other fun things like we don't like the moral relativism that you and I were discussing a little bit earlier. We consider the 4-letter F-bomb, as we call it, the word fair, in our family, because really life isn't fair. Life is about God's brand of justice, and a lot of times that doesn't seem fair at all. And if you get obsessed with equal outcomes or equal, they like to say equal opportunities, you're talking about redistribution in this country, you know. And so we try to raise our kids with concepts that we think will help them understand the foundational freedoms so beautifully illustrated by the founders of this country. And I think that again, what you said earlier about the truth being so self-evident that it really doesn't take a lot. I think it's more about relinquishing control to God than it is about taking control of our children, if that makes any sense.
It totally does. I'm Kevin McCullough. That's Dr. Gina Loudon, and what we're discussing is this kind of ethereal concept in today's world called honor. Gina, yesterday, after the shutdown was done and we were all responding to it in the 24-hour news cycle, I did quite a bit of commentary yesterday on really what a page I think the nation has turned. I believe that we have really, truly, now 51% plus of us become takers in our country instead of producers.
Yeah.
Some people were very offended by that, got lots of mail about that. But at the end of the day, the very mindset of whether I am contributing versus whether I am consuming really, really is a biblical idea. It's not just a political talking point. It's not just an issue of economic theory. it is actually something that is rooted in this really core understanding of how we honor one another. So if I'm producing, even in the Old Testament days, the goal was always to produce extra, so that if I harvested the field and the corners were left unharvested, then those that did not have could come and harvest those, and everyone would be cared for. Mm-hmm. But Gina, I don't think there's any path back for America at this point. I think until we change the take versus produce mentality of more than 51% of the country, and I'm not sure that that's capable anymore with the overwhelming marketing odds that are going against us. I think America has fundamentally become something it has never been before, and that is a nation of taking. Your thoughts on all that?
Mm-hmm. Gosh, I so appreciate everything that you said, and I feel that sometimes too. But I refuse to be discouraged, because I've been through too many challenges in my life where I was completely brought to my knees, completely down and out, completely desperate. One of those was a 10-year search for a child with Down syndrome, while I knew that more than 90% of babies with Down syndrome are being aborted, and all I wanted was just to have one. And it was like every door closed, everything. I called abortion clinic after abortion clinic. I begged. I wanted this baby so much. I knew not only did I just want that presence in my life of a different angle of the Holy Spirit than you can get anyplace else, and that is in the character of someone with Down syndrome. But I wanted my children to be one of those people that were raised with a sibling with a disability, so that they then would go out into the world and be unintimidated by people's differences. So I wanted that so badly, and I always felt called to it. And every pregnancy I thought, oh, this is going to be my baby with Down syndrome, and then it wasn't. And it was such a search, and it wasn't until I was completely at the end of that search, realizing people with Down syndrome aren't even born anymore. How in the heck do I think I'm going to end up being blessed with this child that I've always prayed for, who I already had named Samuel from, of course, the scripture in Samuel. And but it was right then that God said, watch this. And I've always found it so amazing how God does dwell in the realm of irony. We have to remember that the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords came to us in the simplest of means, born in a food trough, in absolute abject poverty. He could have come however he wanted, but he dwells in the realm of irony. So when we are, as a nation, brought to our threadbare place that we are right now, where we can't see hope and we can't even hardly recognize concepts that have been integral to our system forever, like freedom and honor, this is precisely where he can come in and go, watch this. And so I look forward to that.
I agree with that, Dr. Gina, but I'm going to push back a little bit on you. Because until the church does its business the way the church is called to be, that's not going to happen. Pagans are doing their job, right? Like they're being pagans. They're living the way they live when you live in the dark with no knowledge of anything.
Yes.
That's what pagans are supposed to do. It's the church that's fallen asleep at the switch, and it's the church that derailed the train, and that's the church that's gone and blown up the track. I mean, we are in such deep trouble from where the beginning of truth must be told in order for it to eventually radiate to all. That's where, and I don't think I'm particularly discouraged. I wouldn't say that I'm discouraged. What I would say is that I'm wondering if I'm watching something historic that God's doing to really get America's attention in a way that he won't get any other way. And that is that maybe we're becoming so postmodern, so post-Christian, that it's time for the purification of the church to really start. And unless we're kind of like suffering for our faith, we're not really going to be obedient and really living the way we're supposed to.
I don't disagree with anything that you said, but I will say this. It absolutely does not, Christian, absolve our responsibility to continue the fight.
Amen.
We will be held accountable for this. And this is what I always say to people. I always say, 20 years from now, if I'm sitting in a gulag with my children, and they look at me and they say, Mama, what were you doing when the United States, because there were people sitting in gulags in Nazi Germany whose children looked at them and said, what were you doing to fight this? And we have to be prepared to answer those questions. And I want a good list. I want a tombstone. I always tell my kids, just put, she died trying on it because I will fight to my death trying, and I might even do some of the wrong things. I might make some of the wrong decisions, but I will try because as Christians, we are implored to fight for these basic freedoms. So what upsets me worse than almost anything are Christians who say, well, it's all going to go down the way it's going to go down and God's in control, so I'm going to flip on the television and watch the next sporting event.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's the big problem. The other big problem, though, is pastors in the pulpit. The black robe regimen, I'm sure you're very familiar with historically. When you wanted to run for office, if you decided this is what you wanted to do, the first thing you would do is go to the party bosses. Who were the party bosses? They were the pastors because they led politics in our culture. And that's the way our system was designed. Don't forget, our capital was essentially a church before certain things changed. Your First Amendment right to freedom as a pastor isn't relinquished when you put a white collar on. And pastors need to understand that, and they need to be implored, and they need to be held accountable by their congregations to continue to preach politics from the pulpit. And I think that's really our only hope.
They've been scared right out of that opportunity.
Yeah.
Dr. Gina Loudon, thank you for stopping by. It's
Thanks
such
for
an
having
honor to
me.
have you with us. And please give your contact info to Brent so you and I can connect off air. But so grateful that you're in the neighborhood today and around, and just what a great conversation. And I hope it was truly the most unique interview you've ever had.
The most ever. Thank you so much.
God bless.
You too.
I'm Kevin McCullough. That music means that Brian Fisher is on the way next with Focal Point, and I understand that Dr. Gina will be making an appearance in his broadcast as well. So stay with us on AFR Talk for more of Dr. Gina. Kevin McCullough, so glad to be with you. Please check the Facebook page over the weekend. AFAtoday.com is that one. My main one is Kevin McCullough, Facebook.com/KMC01. And we'll see you tonight on the Kevin McCullough Show. Much more of the day's news and headlines as we recount that. And then we'll be back here Monday. God bless. Have a great weekend.